Coming up today on Locked On at Texas Tech, Labor Day edition. A win is a win?
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And today's episode brought to you by 5 Hour Energy, fixing tired fast with zero sugar and a convenient portable size. It's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. So go to 5hourenergy.com and use our promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. Offer only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you. Kicking off the week with a Labor Day edition, and appreciate all those who are making us a part of their holiday. And now we got a game in the books to react to. And oh boy, are there some things to react to. Got a few different points we'll get into on today's episode as we take a look at some of the things that went right for Texas Tech, other things obviously that went wrong for Texas Tech, and what the Red Raiders will take away from this experience as they get a 52-51 win over Abilene Christian and utilize some extra time to do it. But obviously, for coaches, players, fans, supporters alike, the heights of frustration leaving week number one. And that is where Joey McGuire began his conversation with the media at today's press conference, talking about how frustrated he is following that experience.
I know everybody's frustrated. I mean, there's no person more frustrated than me. And the defense side of the ball is kind of really tough because I think everybody saw, I don't think you can question our offensive skill after Saturday night, and you're going to see it again. We have great offensive skill. And if you've come to our first two scrimmages, our defense dominated our offense. I was shocked of how we played. I do think, and Coach Bowie is the OC at Abilene Christian, and after the game, I thought that he did a great job of putting us in some situations. We've on the secondary, we've got to communicate a lot better. We've got to do a lot better job of being on the same page. Some of those big plays, we weren't on the same page. There's no excuse for it.
A whole lot of looking inward as you leave week number one and try to, I guess I would say, bounce back from a win. Is that how we're feeling?
Yeah, and you said a second ago, you said, we got a few different points to get into in the show. I mean, we got a lot of points, like 103 of them to get into. Yeah, and how we got to that point. We had talked a lot and probably not enough. I'll take the blame for that on the youth and inexperience and just on their defense in general, but really in their secondary. And I think it was, if we go back to one of these shows that we would have done before the very first practices, I remember Joey had that initial press conference and he made 3 points very clear. QB health, the O-line needs to take a step up, and I'm really curious about the competition in the secondary because of the youth. And that was just kind of like there are 3 things that they needed to sort out before camp even started. And then you get to game day and you find out, I guess, that and people will hear this and go, well, he's not going to fix it all. No, he wouldn't have fixed it all, but he would have helped at some level. But no reason you should have given up 51 points and looked like you had really no answer on guys running free. You can't get a pass rush because they're getting rid of the ball. I think the comment was made today, about 2.5 seconds was Ben MacGyver getting rid of it. Snap, 1, 2, and then gone, and you weren't getting home. But Braylon Luck's not playing didn't help you because I think Jalen Peoples, what ACU did was they picked on a young corner, I think, quite a bit. And there was the pass where CJ Baskerville gives up what looks like a blown assignment, and he's back there and he kind of falls down, and it was maybe the 71-yarder. And I think he's pointing at Jalen Peoples. I think there's some miscommunication there. But we probably just didn't emphasize it enough about how scary it is to have as much youth. There's a lot of redshirt freshmen, a lot of redshirt sophomores, and a lot of guys that just playing their first ball at Texas Tech together. And you've got, you got, I don't want to say embarrassed, but you got exploited, picked on, made to look poor, the whole deal. And I thought Rick Bowie, the OC at Valdosta, I mean, he just kind of – and what I did find interesting was today you find out that your coaches had a lengthy conversation with Coach Bowie this morning and about what did you see? There's a lot of familiarity amongst those coaching staffs, and you're not playing each other, I don't think, for a while or again anytime soon, I don't think. And so I think they feel free to – and by the way, shout out to Keith Patterson and Connor Dubin, who one, I believe, is still in Lubbock, UMC. And Keith Patterson was in Lubbock until Sunday morning, could not get home with his team. Our thoughts are with those folks and the others that were injured with that terrible accident right after the game was over. But it's affecting ACU into this week. So it's very kind of ACU to kind of have back and forth and talking about what went on in that first game. But yeah, defensively, man, you got a lot of growing up to do, Cowan, and you got a lot of growing up to do in a hurry. And I'm not so sure that I'm not most concerned about the lack of pass rush or the lack of pressure you were able to apply on Maverick MacGyver, who was comfortable all night, never got moved off of his spot, and Noah Dateray doesn't help. No Esters doesn't help. No Dylan Spencer, but you got all this depth, and it's just there wasn't a lot of things happening there. So I don't know. Pick your problem and rank them. I don't know, but I thought a lot of it was, and I didn't think your linebackers that we had bragged on. I'll take the blame there too. Didn't play particularly well. Chasing running backs and Nehemiah Martinez all over and just look like you're a step slower or misdiagnosed, or I just thought there was some of that mixed in there too.
I didn't see any lack of communication, missed coverages, poor angles, poor pursuit, or missed tackles from you. So I don't know why you're taking any blame whatsoever. Well, let's go ahead and cut, because I'm not going to take any blame for that. So I'll just cut that off right now. And yeah, I don't know what other word there is for it other than embarrassing when it's 615 total yards given up, 506 through the air. That's insane. And I do agree. I don't think on any level, whether it was the front, the mid, or the back end, was there anything to really be proud about walking away from that one defensively. I did think it was interesting to hear sort of the breakdown like you alluded to there of, how quickly MacGyver was able to get rid of the ball therein, kind of stunting any ability to get to him or apply some pressure. I think Coach, and there's an analytical approach, I guess, to everything, but Coach McGuire, I think, said that when you kind of simulate that out and you're saying 2.7 seconds that a quarterback is able to get the ball, then you're probably getting a sack around every 90 plays. So like 0.8 per game or something you may be collecting if you're doing something like that in this day and age with how many plays an offense is typically running. That ain't going to cut it. And, the picking on people's part of it or things like that, there was some of that, but I don't think it was simply just, hey, this guy is physically outmatched or overmanned. I just think there was also some really poor communication across the board and that's where it comes into some of the stuff that just looks like blown assignments or whatever.
And I think they touched on some of that. We did talk about this, and the reason I was apologizing because I want people to understand we're trying to lay it out as we see it, and we think we know and all that. And if we misrepresent, but I mean, I'm telling you, I think we probably said this a million times. It felt like in the last week to 10 days, you get young kids out there, and it's like, oh, squirrel. And
Bomb squad.
Whatever it is. I mean, the pyro, the
strobe light.
The new South End, or just because I've already heard from there was one of the players that transferred in before the game. he came from such a small school that he pointed to one of the sections. I had somebody's parent tell me this. He pointed to like one of the sections in the stands and goes, "That's as many people as I played in front of at my games last year." Just like that one little section right there. Like, look at this. Like, oh my gosh. Yeah. And you don't want to think about that, and you don't want to think about like the freak out factor and the whole like, I know what I'm supposed to do, but man, I'm just a slight distraction, or I take a slight misstep, or you whatever it may be. And that's experienced players don't have those issues. The quote unquote veterans. But I will say this, I don't think we can sit here and blame it all on the young players, because I think, I don't know if CJ Baskerville played his best game. I think it's, Ben and Jacob, I think maybe had their moments where they looked good, but at times, no. You didn't get a Braylon Lux in the game. But you only have a handful of older players, and if they are kind of blending in with some of the youth and experience, but this was something that was touched on, was a lot of the pomp and circumstance was working against you a bit, I think, at times. But that needs to get sorted out. I mean, it's not as big of a setting in Pullman, Washington, but it's a road trip, and I'm sure they've got a sound system and crowds and cheerleaders and pyro and the band and the whole deal,
Yeah, well, hopefully the pomp part of our story in Lubbock is over, because you only open up a new thing one time, and now that's been done. So I hope we can just kind of move away from that point. But, aside from getting back to, I think what's most concerning to me, and it's kind of hard to pick because it was all concerning on the defensive side of the football, I did not see Texas Tech looking physically imposing at the line of scrimmage at any point. And that doesn't really have to do with like, hey, this guy's able to get it out so quick so we can't sack him. That also has to do with like, I'm not seeing their offensive line going backwards. I'm not seeing ball carriers, aside from a couple of very key times. Shout out to Jaden Cofield. But aside from a couple of very key times, I'm not seeing ball carriers touched at or behind the line of scrimmage. And just from a physical standpoint, a measurable standpoint, I felt like we looked kind of small. I got to be honest, along the defensive line, whether it was the outside linebackers or those within the interior. And maybe you are going to be that, but when it looks that way against Abilene Christian, against an FCS team, I'm thinking, good Lord, what's it going to look like whenever you get into conference play? So and that's not something that you just like solve or coach. You don't coach a guy to be bigger. Maybe you can coach him to play bigger. I don't know. But that's not going to be something that changes in coming weeks. But I was concerned really on both sides of the football. Now, the offensive conversation was much different because you had a much more productive night, obviously, offensively, and we'll get to some of that stuff. But I did not feel like the line of scrimmage was really dominated by either side, but particularly defensively, I did not see much consistent push. And that may be the thing that stands out to me the most, Chris, that I was maybe the most concerned about, because as you talk about, some of the inexperience in the youth, and you're missing Braylon Lux on the back end, and maybe some of that will come along. Maybe Lux will return. Maybe some of the inexperience is solved by, get this, experience. But the ability to be physical enough to dominate or compete at the line of scrimmage, I don't really know where that comes from if you don't have that already in tow. Maybe I'm wrong, but what did you think about what you really saw there from that defensive front, as far as generally who's getting the push, and maybe how that lined up with what you anticipated coming into it? First, today's episode brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. 5-Hour Energy fixes tired fast. Whether you have a long list of tasks at work or a bundle of do-it-yourself projects to tackle at home, take a 5-Hour Energy shot so you can cover everything with energy to spare. If you're like me, you've always got a lengthy list of things to get done around the house. So when you're getting your supplies for any project, don't forget the most essential one, a 5-Hour Energy shot. 5-Hour Energy shots give you the feeling of alertness and energy you need to get in the zone. And that's why 5-Hour Energy is the brand hardworking people like you have trusted for over 20 years to give them the alert, energized feeling they need to get through a busy and hectic day. And you always know where to find 5-Hour Energy shots, right at the cash register at nearly every convenience, drug, and grocery store nationwide. And even better, you can stock up on money-saving multi-packs to make sure you never run out of delicious, energizing 5-Hour Energy shots. And right now, if you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5-Hour Energy today, you can use our promo code LOCKEDONCFB. That's LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. Hurry, because this offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions and does not apply to subscription orders. Boost your day and boost your life and get in the Get It Done zone by going to 5hourenergy.com today. What did you think about what you really saw there from that defensive front as far as generally who's getting the push and maybe how that lined up with what you anticipated coming into it?
You know, we'd heard a lot about depth, strength in numbers. I think they had seen successful or positive signs on defense most of August. But I think that what you are concerned about is, with all this depth and everything, do you want, like, we'll just sum it up this way. Would you rather have, 3 Jaden Cofields on your team or 1 Broderick Washington? Do you want 3 Harvey Dysons or 1 Tyree Wilson?
Yeah.
And so what I kind of saw is all these parts are coming in and out. There's a lot of, everybody's just kind of a guy. Nobody kind of stands out. Everybody kind of blends in. Like you need, the NFL guys get paid because people can make plays. And it's fun to be deep and solid and everything and have depth and feel like you've got some. But do you have any playmakers in the bunch? Or is there anybody that can – and I don't know if it's just you're smaller. There's a few of those guys. DB Carroll is not the tallest guy. There's a reason he was at Rice. James Hansen was in the portal for 3 weeks to a month before he kind of settled into the situation at Texas Tech. And some of your other guys they are younger. They haven't been. And I tell you, like, if you want to talk, and I feel like I can say the word disappointing or disappointed. I was disappointed in like what I saw from my guy Isaac Smith. He doesn't look yet like the guy that we saw that was playing against Ole Miss a year and a half ago or nearly whatever that was. Close to, I guess, that's almost
yeah.
I'm not, math. That's 20 months ago when he last played in a football game. So I can see why maybe he's not a starter. But there was a lot of those guys that you expected some different things from, and you didn't see it. And whether that's what ACU was doing or whether they're just rusty coming back from injury or inexperienced, I don't know. It doesn't really matter, and fans don't care. And Tim DeRuyter ultimately doesn't care. Joey McGuire doesn't care, but it needs to get better and get fixed. And Tim said at his press conference today, it's not his first time to be in a situation with a young group that he's got to grow up in a hurry. And I think we all understand Tim is too good of a coach to where there's not going to, not be improvement throughout the season. They'll get better. They'll get that experience. How quickly can it come, though? How quickly can you figure things out or where you find the right combination of players or you see some progression with guys? And I hate it that you're not going to do it with Joe Adedire. He'd been one of the few guys that had some experience, played through an injury all last year. But he's a guy that's, hadn't redshirted. And so I guess he's going to get his redshirt year this year after playing as a true freshman and a true sophomore. But yeah, he's somebody that he was brought to Texas Tech Media Days. He's got something to him and 20 plus games of experience under his belt that is now, out of the mix. So,
yeah, if you missed that news, lost for the season. So we will not see Adedire on the field in 2024. One thing to take away from the game, and Coach McGuire will talk here in just a moment about learning from these types of situations, obviously, and that's what you're there to do, win or lose, take something away from it beyond just the win or the loss. I did feel like at one point or another we saw some guts from Texas Tech, because my thought kind of in the final 5 minutes of regulation was stars are out the window whenever you've got a team across the field from you that's as close as Abilene Christian was to beating Texas Tech. It's about who can really dig down and find a way to win. And the Red Raiders, for all the faults that were there up to that point, did eventually find a way to win. And Coach McGuire touched on that and what they would take away from this game in today's conversation. Here's Coach McGuire. First, today's episode brought to you by Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Locked On Texas Tech fans, I want to take a moment to give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love. It's Ultimate College Football Head Coach. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Can you imagine actually being the head coach of the Red Raiders? From recruiting players, hiring coaching staff, to overseeing training camp and handling school scholarships, you control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. Think you can handle the pressure? Find out today. And even better, Ultimate College Football Head Coach is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline, so you can play on the go as you want and when you want. And of course, we've got a special offer for Locked On Texas Tech fans. Use our promo code LOCKEDONCFB. That's LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost for your program. Make sure you take advantage of this perk, as it's going to help your team get off to a strong start. To download the game, just visit ultimate-cfb.com. That's ultimate-cfb.com, or find it in the app stores, and kick off the ultimate football experience with Ultimate College Football Head Coach now, and begin your coaching legacy today. For all the faults that were there up to that point, did eventually find a way to win. And Coach McGuire touched on that and what they would take away from this game in today's conversation. Here's Coach McGuire.
We're going to learn something from this. Like every situation we're in, we have to learn from. And, that was my point to the guy at Saturday night. We're in the game we're in. So if you go back, and we talked about this whenever we met in February, we're going to be in games to where we didn't expect to be in this type of game. Find a way to win the game. That was said over the headset multiple times. This is where we're at. We can't change where we're at right now. All we can do is find a way to win the game. And the guys found a way to win the game. I thought it was a really good call by DeRuyter, to mix up the front. We felt with what they were going to do is they had a single receiver. So you're going there. We had really that to where we could double cover that. We gave them numbers out here so they couldn't throw the screen. We gave them the box to run the draw in, and we mixed up the front to try to stop the draw, and we were able to do it and win the game. And so it's just find a way to win a game.
It's something that in the midst of a game like that, a fan or whatever, guys like us can kind of get down and, wow, there's no way to salvage this, obviously, but you cannot be that type of guy if you're wearing a helmet, you're wearing pads, or you're wearing a headset, I guess, on the sideline. You got to stay locked in and find a way to win. And I thought, if nothing else, that was something that I was glad to see, that they were able to dig down and in that moment still get out of there as a 1-0 football team.
Yeah, because, the fans, so many of them and probably listeners of this show, you're just so frustrated. It's kind of it's a bad look. It's how in the world, it feels like a loss, I guess, is what I'm trying to get to.
You're a 32-point favorite.
Yeah, it wasn't a loss, but I get all the frustration. And, and you do want it to be better and look the right way and all those things. But, and nobody's going to take much solace in, well, I'm glad you could have made news for completely different reasons and been the part of the biggest win in Abilene Christian's school history and all those things. But it wasn't. But, because a lot of the issues, Cowan, it looked like a team that had questions, and the reason it was, the reason for the questions was it was picked 9th or 10th in the league before the season started.
Yep.
Because of the youth on defense and all those guys you graduated, your corners, your D tackles, a safety that's playing for the Cardinals for you. There's so much experience is just gone. And there's some questions about the offensive line. Do you have a quarterback that stay healthy? And so you were picked, I don't know, what was it, 9th or 10th by the media or the whatever it was. And that's kind of why you fell in that. And unfortunately, we kind of saw boxes checked. Offensive skill looked pretty good. Defense not. Questions up in the trenches still, I think, there. But ultimately getting a result is what this – and I think Joey said that a week ago. we need to be better about not how it looks, but about did we get to the end and get from A to B without worrying about how we got from A to B? Did we get to B?
Yeah.
Pat Mahomes talked to the team about that. We talked about this on last week's show on one of those, I believe. And I don't know if I'm interested in doing the 52-51 in overtime against an FCS team all the time. But yeah, I mean, and it's not going to make anybody feel better, and you're still frustrated, and you still have all the warts and all the things, but I guess better than having the 51 and
That's
being
right.
0-1. Yeah.
It could have been even worse. Just imagine that. Okay. Doom and gloom, plenty of it there. And I'm sure some more to be discussed, obviously, this week. But I do want to get to a couple of things that were as advertised as it translates from the offseason to what we saw in week one. And one of those things in particular, he wears a number 3 jersey. That is Josh Kelly, in addition to other skill player compatriots of his and some of that explosiveness that we were hoping was going to be on display. We saw some of that, and Coach McGuire was asked about Kelly and some of those other guys that were really performing well with the ball in their hands.
And he is special. You look at another thing of just the whole offense, the yards after catch versus any point in my first 2 years. You know, the skill players, I thought they did a good job after they got the ball in their hand of creating more yards after catch. And he had some big plays like that. I've said it. I said it to Barron in the spring whenever he was watching. I say it to Kitley all the time. You know, good things happen whenever Josh Kelly touches the ball early. You know, he really can get this offense moving. And, he is such a tough competitor. He wants the ball in his hand at any point in the game. You know, he's a big play guy. And, man, I was really proud of him. I thought he did a really good job of not only catching the ball, but he did a really good job of yards after catch.
That was awesome to see, man. Brooks, Kelly, Jalen Conyers, Coy Aiken. I will also add to this group special teams Big 12 Player of the Week, Drae McCray, as advertised. And you may be having to win a lot of games by scoring 50-plus if the defense is any indication this year.
Yeah.
But that was one silver lining, and it wasn't a perfect night for the offense by any stretch. But to see some of those guys be more dynamic, obviously, as a group than what we saw last year, that was a sight for sore eyes.
Yeah, Caleb Douglas, too, in overtime, which makes a big play. Yeah, 187 yards after catch. You and I would do these shows after the games last season, and you'd look at it, and you'd have like 37, 40, 72. I mean, there's just not a lot of juice there. And so when it came time for portal and everybody starts wanting to do their thing, I think that when you see this mass exodus of wideouts, I don't think you had a big problem with it because of that very statistic. Unfortunately, Abilene Christian had 186 yards of after the catch, so you beat them by 1 yard as they were. They had some juice too by some guys that used to play for you. I mean, I thought Josh was somebody that look like one of your best players, which is what we kind of touched on most of the offseason. And I think he's a possession guy. He's a juice guy. He's an inside, outside, whatever. But I'm telling you, I do think Coy Aiken is one of your better players too. I love that kid. And he, the couple of touchdowns that he had, I mean, there's going to be more where that came from. So I just think you're in a good – and Conyers with the ball in his hands – it's pretty special. I think he still at times maybe struggles to be involved in the run game with the blocking and all that, but figuring out ways to get him, whether you hand it to him, you're throwing it to him in short, or way down the field on a 4th and 13 that maybe saved your bacon. We realize that, right? That you won a game 52-51 and you convert a 4th and 13, which was a darn near miracle catch, and it could have been overturned. Makes you wonder how the game could have changed if you don't make that play. But
hey, add the 2-point conversion to that list as well.
Absolutely,
another Conyers,
1,000%. Yes, and you do that. You run that because you want Washington State to prepare for it and things like it. And what's the ironic part is Washington State also went for 2, I think, a couple of times too. So you'll be spending equal practice time getting ready for the other team's 2-point conversion scenarios and whatnot. So, but yeah, I thought, and Micah Hudson didn't play much. He did play. I know we'll probably get a lot of questions about it. Maybe we can touch on that and kind of explain maybe in more detail in one of these shows further in the week. But to sum it up succinctly, I mean, that's kind of, he's behind some of these guys, and they did pretty good.
Yeah, it wasn't like it was for lack of playmaking otherwise that you didn't see him, which would have been even more frustrating, I guess. But I did think that part was kind of interesting. But the guys that were out there on the field, including Douglas as well, I forgot to mention him, but I'm glad you did, making some big plays for Texas Tech at some key times. So plenty more to get into this week, as we'll have a few more opportunities to digest what we saw on Saturday. Of course, we'll turn our attention as well to Washington State on the road for week 2. A game in which Texas Tech opened up the week as a favorite. Try that one on for size. So should be a fun one as we get to Pullman, Washington, as you try to learn some things from what was a squeaker of a victory, obviously, in week 1. Chris, appreciate the time as always, man. And we'll be back on the other side to do it all over again.
I appreciate the time. We will do it again, and it's therapy for all of us here. We're in this thing together, people. Win, lose, draw, overtime, regulation, doesn't matter. We'll all kind of put this thing together.
That's right.
As one here. Yeah.
Goose Fraba. Appreciate your time out there as well. Thanks for being there. Get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. And we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.